Hi, I'm Will, and for the past few years, I've been working on figuring out productive ways to use AI for specific use cases. And so, in this video, that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to demo Charlie, which is an AI agent who specializes in creating price quotes for trade show design booth. So, you think about CES, for example, like those big trade shows where you have huge booths. Sometimes those prices of booth can go up to millions of dollars or euros, whatnot. And essentially agencies are building those booths. They're almost like architectural design agencies. And so those projects have to go through a specific process. And what we do with Charlie is actually going into the beginning of the process. So you take, for example, like Boeing or Airbus or Sony, who wants to have a booth at a specific trade show. They're going to be doing a request for proposal, right? They're going to be asking for, they're going to be sending out potentially a request for recommendations, for proposals. And so, they might say, hey, we want to have like a booth 200 meters squared, with this kind of style. Doesn't really matter, but they're going to be providing some requirements in a way. And then you're going to have a bunch of agencies, sometimes maybe 4 or 5, where they're going to be actually working on the proposal for those companies. And the proposal will be an actual, kind of PDF. So you have like a designer actually sitting down and really just focusing on what could be the design for this trade show. So you have to think about, what is the brand, and, it's a true like artistic endeavor in a way. And then what happens is that this proposal is then kind of packaged into a PDF, like an actual file or presentation that will be sent to the customer. But then you also have to have a price quote, because sometimes the customer will provide you with a budget, sometimes they won't. In any case, you have to actually say, hey, here's the price code of what this could be, costing. And so you have to, there's someone, it's usually the salesperson, depending, sometimes there's a role within the agency who spends a lot of time creating that price quote from the design that the designer has provided. So let me show you kind of the inputs here, and then we'll go into actually showing Charlie. The inputs that we have, and this is, by the way, public kind of examples. I'm not going to show you examples from our clients, of course, but I did want to kind of show you what this looks like. So you get a bunch of like 3D mockups like this. You could have like different perspectives. Usually that's what happens. And so that's all like images that you have in this PDF recommendation proposal. Could also be just images as well. You also have a second type of data input, I would say, is this kind of floor plan. Now, this one is it's not really detailed. We're lacking a lot of like dimensions, but you can think about like this top-down floor plan. And sometimes you do have like those different zones whereby like, there's this kind of VIP area, there's maybe like the lounge area, all those kind of things. And you also see like the furniture as well. So that's something that, is cool to see. And then you also have like an elevation plan. And again, this is missing a lot of like dimensions and quotes. This is just like a public example, but you kind of get the point. Is you can imagine that here you're going to have like dimensions here that are showing. So this is kind of what the input is coming from. And for each of those, you're going to have like a bunch of different samples for the same booth that are going to be provided, but mostly just, mockups. And so what an actual human would do in that case is actually look at this and think, well, I need to figure out like the floors. And so the floors, this looks like, wood. Maybe we need to have like a raised floor because, we're not just going to build it on the actual floor of the convention center. So you have to like, account for this. You kind of know like the prices as well. Then you have to think about, is this like, this chair is kind of like typically something that we rent, but then this might be something that we need to build custom made. So you have to think about what is the cost of the custom made. And so all of this is information that experience that every person in the industry kind of has a different approach. And I'm not even talking about like kind of the assembly cost, disassembly, electricity. It's almost like a mini house in a way, right? Like there's so much work to be done. And so this would be something that someone does. They calculate. Everyone kind of has their own calculation technique, but it takes a lot of time, you can imagine. And so what my co-founder has done for 7 years is part of his job was to actually create those price quotes. And so spending hours, sometimes days, depending on the size of the trade show booth, because it could be like 50 meters squared, it could be like 200 meters squared. So, there's a bunch of different kind of considerations. So we thought, why not actually put this into an AI agent? That means try to extract all of the knowledge that our co-founder has and basically put it into an agent that is able to actually view this. And we had this realization at the beginning of the year because the vision capabilities, that means the capacity of a model to actually look at something and understands it, got a lot better. And so that's what we actually did. So let me demo to you Charlie. And I'll just say this, that a lot of it's still, sometimes there are labels in French because most of our customers are French. So the localization hasn't been completely done in English, but I think Charlie should be actually responding in English. So what we're going to do is I'm going to load an actual sample project. We're not going to be mentioning the name of the client, but it's going to be like an actual proposal. Imagine like it's a PDF that has like a bunch of those kind of different, floor plans and 3D mockups. So now that it's in Charlie, you can basically just start away and actually go in and ask it to price the project. And so then what happens is that we just tap into a model, a kind of a model that we pay by inference. And the steps that are going to happen here is actually Charlie will, because the model we use for Charlie, the actual brain, you can see his little face here, doesn't really see well. So what we do is that we actually use a vision tool, which actually calls another model that is a lot better at visualizing things. And so we just provide the recommendation sample here, this PDF, and Charlie is able to ask like, hey, please perform a couple complete analysis of this exhibition stand, qualification and project info. So we can ask, Charlie asks, like, because Charlie cannot see this, we decided to not actually provide the actual PDF information and images. It knows there's an image there's a file that is attached, but it doesn't know what is in it. So it has to ask for the vision tool. And this is partially because we want to make sure that Charlie is focusing not so much on loading up too much context and too much tokens, and because in any way, because it can't really see properly, it would probably be, kind of a bad, it could be an issue later on because it would actually pollute the context of Charlie in that case. And so, this is looking good. Basically what we have here is that we have like a bunch of information here that is loaded up. It basically does like a full analysis of it. And then what I can do, I'm just going to close this one here. It is asking me like, are the dimensions correct? Like it say like it's 90 meters squared. The analysis shows a sophisticated stand with custom built elements. Looks good. So I'm going to say looks good. Let's continue. And then it's going to be able to create the quotes. Now the first step usually to create the quote is actually to produce the line items and the categories. It is not about figuring out the prices. You just want to have the line items. That means the descriptions of what all the categories are about. So this will take about 30 seconds. And at this stage, Charlie is actually creating the quote and populating it in a way. And so then we're going to see the actual results show up. And then we'll move on to the next step after this, which will be the pricing. There we go. So we have this kind of booth here area, and then we have like categories, so walls, headers, banners, built-ins, custom furniture, rentals, decoration, audiovisual, electrical lighting, graphics, signage, technical alerters, assembly, disassembly, cleaning, agency services. And so what this means essentially is that we have basically all the descriptions, and it tells me like, hey, we have 41 detailed line items across 13 categories, which I can modify, but we're going to continue to actually go into the pricing. Let's go into the pricing. And in this case, what we do is that each agency that we work with, we kind of customize Charlie based on their, prices. So we have like a standard kind of price range, which is kind of like for the French market. But then we also are able to actually customize the prices for each agency because they kind of work differently. And here they're asking like, hey, do we have a budget? Does the client have a budget? I'm going to say no budget, and we're going to go for medium prices. So all of this, by the way, this is like in the system prompt, like the questions that Charlie is asking, it's in the system prompt that we have designed, which both contains the, I would say the business knowledge, like the domain specific knowledge, but also kind of the, the workflow and like the conversation as well. So here what we're going to have is Charlie is asking for prices to another tool. So this is like another tool. There's like a database of prices. This database is not anything fancy. It's just like a very big markdown file, like a big text file. And then we're providing this to the get prices tool, and the get prices tool is able to actually look at this and basically just return the prices that it found. So this is going to take, I think, less time than the other one, because we need a less performant model, so it's usually faster in that case. But we're going to use those. It's going to use those prices to then actually provide this into the actual quote. So here we have some of the prices here, headers and banners, and then it's directly updating the quote. So we don't even need to tell it to actually do this thing. It's going to be updating the quote with just the prices. So it doesn't need to modify the rest. It's just going to be applying the prices to the quote. And there we go. We have the prices. And so we have this kind of, pricing here that is displayed. And, we can modify everything. That's also the beautiful thing about this, is that we wanted to potentially, for example, like modify, let's say I wanted to modify the purchase price of those carpet tiles. Let's say it's not 45, but it's actually going to be 50. We can save this and everything is modified directly. And then so we have it as documents that we're collaborating with Charlie on. And so then we can go back and forth with it. And then if I save this, there we go. That has saved, and then we have different versions that are available in that case. So this is a very short kind of one-step process, and then we can also go back and modify and ask it to modify. So for example, like if I was asking like, hey, can you modify the coefficients, like the markup coefficients that we're going to be adding? That could also be something that Charlie does. But this was like the same workflow. And then what we'll do is actually, we'll actually have the quotes be available as like actual entities and have Charlie be able to actually modify those. So this is like the first kind of main workflow that Charlie will be doing, and more will be coming in the future. So that was the demo of Charlie. I hope you get some value from this. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments. This has been really interesting to build, and we're loving the reaction that our customers are having, and that they're really liking it. And that I think we have found a pretty productive use of AI in that case, and solving and automating a process that is really, really just, this is not where the people bring in the value in that case. We want the people who are doing the price quotes to actually be talking to their customers and not be just like figuring out those kind of it's almost administrative work in that case. So we want to kind of strip away from that and move on to something more valuable for their time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.